It is the most beautiful lie in the history of sports. A single golden football meticulously forged in a Parisian workshop, capable of turning legendary athletes into immortal gods and reducing world-class geniuses into bitter, forgotten runners-up. Every single year, without fail, the entire footballing world stops, holds its collective breath, and waits for a select group of journalists to hand out the Ballon d'Or. We are told it is the ultimate measure of footballing greatness. We are told it represents the absolute peak of individual performance over a grueling season. But if you have been watching this beautiful game for long enough, you know the truth is far more complicated, far more dramatic, and infinitely more chaotic than what they show you on TV. Welcome back to the Football Archive, and today we are diving deep into a decades-long psychological war. We are looking at the thin, blurry line between universal respect and absolute daylight robbery. Because for every year where the entire planet looked at the winner and said, yes, he completely deserved it, there is another year where the streets never forget the injustice. We are talking about the decisions that made fans lose their minds, made elite clubs boycott entire galas, and left all-time greats feeling completely hollowed out by the politics of the sport. Before we break down the 10 legendary players who define these two extremes, do yourself a massive favor. Hit that subscribe button right now, smash the like button, and drop a comment down below telling me which specific Ballon d'Or decision still keeps you up at night. Let us get a massive debate going in the comments section, because today, nobody is safe. The Ballon d'Or has a dual identity. On one hand, it is a glorious celebration of human triumph. Think about those rare, magical nights where there is no debate, no Twitter meltdowns, and no conspiracy theories. Nights where a player was so staggeringly dominant, so undeniably artistic, or so emotionally resilient that even rival fans had to stand up and applaud. Those are the years where the award feels pure, honoring the very soul of Joga Bonito, or the sheer, relentless efficiency of a historic campaign. But then, you look at the dark side of the Golden Ball. The side fueled by heavy marketing campaigns, corporate biases, sudden changes in voting deadlines, and narrative-driven journalism that completely ignores what actually happened on the green pitch. That is where the controversies breed. That is where we see players winning historic trebles, shattering records, and outclassing everyone else, only to watch the trophy go to someone with a bigger global brand or a sexier storyline. It makes you realize that football has never truly been a simple game of 11 against 11. It is a game of optics, power, and perception. From the iconic redemption arcs in the early 2000s to the modern, viral social media meltdowns that saw entire institutions fly into a state of pure fury, the history of this award is a mirror reflection of the sport itself. It is a beautiful, broken mess that we cannot look away from. Over the next 11 blocks, we are going chronologically through 10 iconic players who represent the absolute peaks of respect and the deepest valleys of controversy. We will look at how the shift from raw talent to tactical numbers changed how people vote, and how internet culture amplified the anger of the fans. It is a journey through heartbreak, joy, and political maneuvering behind closed doors in Paris. We will see how some players built an entire empire off one good month, while others spent 12 months tearing up European football only to leave empty-handed. This is not just a list of winners and losers. This is an exploration of football culture itself, looking at how the perception of greatness changes depending on who holds the pen and who controls the media narrative. This is the ultimate breakdown of football justice and football corruption. Strap yourselves in because our journey begins in the year 2002 with a man who defied medical science just to remind the world who the real king was. We are going to look at the stories that defined generations of football fans, looking at the fine details that separated the legends from the myths. To understand what true, unfiltered respect feels like in the footballing world, you have to travel back to the year 2002. The place is Paris, and the man of the hour is Ronaldo Luis Nazario de Lima. Today, modern fans look at statistics, spreadsheets, and expected goals to determine who deserves the ultimate individual prize. But in 2002, the Ballon d'Or was captured by something far more powerful than numbers. It was won by pure emotion, narrative, and one of the greatest medical resurrections in human history. To fully appreciate why this specific victory was so deeply respected across the globe, you have to remember the absolute horror that preceded it. Between the years of 1999 and 2001, the Fenomeno was living a complete nightmare. His right knee was a ticking time bomb. When it ruptured completely during a Coppa Italia match for Inter Milan against Lazio, the images sent shockwaves through the sport. Doctors openly questioned if he would ever walk normally again, let alone sprint past world-class defenders with that terrifying power and speed that made him a global icon. He spent years in dark training rooms, undergoing agonizing physical therapy, completely isolated from the pitch he loved. He missed the entire qualification campaign for the 2002 World Cup, and when he was finally selected for the final tournament in South Korea and Japan, the entire media landscape treated him like a massive gamble. They thought he was washed up, a shadow of his former self, a tragic figure destined to watch a new generation take over his throne. What followed was 7 matches of pure, unadulterated footballing magic. Ronaldo did not just play. He completely dominated the tournament with that bizarre, iconic haircut that captured the imagination of every kid on the planet. He scored 8 goals in total, including 2 crucial goals in the final against Oliver Kahn and a legendary German defense that had looked completely unbreakable up until that fateful night in Yokohama. It was a fairy tale ending to a tragic chapter. Later that year, when he secured his high-profile transfer to Real Madrid to join the Galacticos empire, the Ballon d'Or voting was essentially a formality. Statistically, there were players who had played more club games that year. There were players who had shown more tactical consistency over the traditional 12-month European calendar. But nobody cared about that. The footballing world wanted to honor the sheer resilience of a genius who had climbed out of the deepest, darkest valley of injury to touch the absolute peak of the sport. When Ronaldo lifted that golden ball in December of 2002, there was no resentment from his peers, no angry fan campaigns online, and no accusations of corruption. It was an international celebration of human spirit. Rival fans, rival players, and cynical journalists all stood united in their admiration for a man who had defied medical science just to reclaim his crown. It remains one of the most romantic, universally accepted, and deeply respected decisions in the history of the award. It showed that sometimes football is not just about a spreadsheet. It is about the soul of the game, the stories that inspire us, and the legendary figures who refuse to break under pressure. Ronaldo Nazario reminded everyone that class is permanent, and his 2002 victory set a gold standard for what a truly respected Ballon d'Or winner looks like. It was a beautiful moment of pure justice. If the year 2002 was a celebration of footballing romance, then the year 2003 was the exact moment the Ballon d'Or introduced a generation of fans to absolute, unfiltered controversy. Enter Pavel Nedved, the relentless, blonde-haired engine of Juventus. Now, let's be completely fair from the very beginning. Pavel Nedved was an absolute monster of a midfielder. He was a tireless box-to-box warrior with a ferocious long-range shot, incredible tactical intelligence, and a work rate that made him the beating heart of a Juventus side that captured the Serie A title and marched all the way to the UEFA Champions League final. He was a brilliant footballer, a true professional, and a legend of the Italian game. But in the year 2003, there was another man playing football on a completely different planet, a man who was redefining the entire concept of a modern forward. That man was Thierry Henry. If you ask any football fan who watched a Premier League during this specific era, they will tell you that the 2002 to 2003 season from Thierry Henry was the single greatest individual campaign in the history of English football that did not result in a Ballon d'Or. The French striker was playing with a level of grace, speed, and sheer arrogance that looked like something out of a video game. Statistically, what Henry did that year was completely unprecedented. He scored 32 goals and provided an astonishing 23 assists in all competitions for Arsenal. To this day, his record of 20 assists in a single Premier League season remains a legendary milestone that has only ever been equaled, but never broken. He was the chief architect of the beautiful, flowing football that Arsene Wenger was perfecting in North London. He was scoring solo goals from his own half against Tottenham Hotspur, destroying Inter Milan at the San Siro, and terrorizing every single defender who dared to step in his path. Yet, when the votes were counted in Paris, Pavel Nedved took home the golden ball, leaving Thierry Henry in second place. The footballing world was left in a state of absolute shock. The justification from the voters at the time was heavily centered around the Champions League. Nedved had guided Juventus past Real Madrid in a legendary semi-final, though he tragically missed the final due to a heartbreaking yellow card. Arsenal, on the other hand, had exited the competition in the second group stage. But fans and pundits alike argued that the Ballon d'Or was supposed to be an individual award, not a team trophy. Henry had single-handedly carried the creative and scoring burden of one of the best teams in the world, putting up numbers that midfielders and forwards could only dream of. The decision sparked an intense debate about how much weight should be placed on a few knockout matches versus a sustained 12-month display of absolute individual superiority. For many fans in that prime 25 to 45 demographic who grew up watching Henry effortlessly glide past entire defenses, this was the original modern heist. It was the moment people realized that playing in the Champions League final carried a political weight that could completely overshadow a historically dominant domestic season. Pavel Nedved earned his respect through blood, sweat, and tears, but the shadow of Thierry Henry's legendary 23 assists will forever loom over the 2003 gala. It remains a deeply polarizing decision that fans still argue about in bars and internet forums to this day, proving that sometimes the voters simply look at the trophies on the table rather than the magic happening right before their eyes on the pitch. If you want to talk about a year where the Ballon d'Or voter panel did not just get right, but actually captured the absolute artistic peak of the sport, you have to look at the year 2005. This was the era of pure, unfiltered joy. The place was Paris, and the recipient was Ronaldo da Moreira, known to the entire planet simply as Ronaldinho. There are moments in football history where a player is so incredibly dominant that they win trophies through tactical discipline and sheer physical output. Then, there are ultra-rare moments where a player transcends the competitive nature of the sport itself, turning 90 minutes of football into a breathtaking theatrical performance. That is exactly what Ronaldinho did for Barcelona during the 2004 to 2005 season. He did not just defeat his opponents, he completely hypnotized them. He brought the street football of Porto Alegre to the grandest stages of European football, playing with a permanent, infectious smile that made it utterly impossible to hate him, no matter what team you supported. Statistically, Ronaldinho's numbers were great, but they did not even begin to tell the true story of his impact on the world. He scored 9 goals in the Champions League and led Barcelona to their first La Liga title in 6 long years. But the real magic was in the moments that defied the laws of physics. Who could ever forget that legendary goal against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, where he stood completely still at the edge of the box, danced his hips in a samba motion, and casually poked the ball past a frozen Petr Cech with absolutely no backlift? Who could forget the classic elastico nutmegs on the touchline, the no-look passes that completely unpeeled world-class defensive lines, and the overhead kicks that looked like poetry in motion? The ultimate peak of this legendary run came during El Clasico at the Santiago Bernabeu, where Ronaldinho tore Real Madrid apart so comprehensively, gliding past their multi-million-dollar defenders with such ease, that the notoriously hostile Madrid fans actually stood up and gave a Barcelona player a roaring standing ovation. It was a moment of pure cinematic sportsmanship that we will probably never see again in our lifetimes. When December of 2005 arrived and Ronaldinho was handed the golden ball, there was absolutely zero room for debate. He secured a massive gap in points over Frank Lampard and Steven Gerrard, who had both enjoyed historic European seasons in England. But everybody knew that Ronaldinho was operating on a completely different spiritual plane. He was the undisputed global ambassador of Joga Bonito. His victory was highly respected because it reminded a generation of fans why they fell in love with football in the first place. It was not about corporate efficiency or robotic structures. It was about creativity, audacity, and the freedom to express yourself on the pitch. Even today, the 25 to 45 demographic looks back at 2005 as a golden era of footballing romance, a time when the best player in the world was also the most entertaining human being on earth. Ronaldinho's Ballon d'Or victory remains a shining beacon of universal respect, a beautiful moment when footballing art was properly rewarded with the highest individual honor in the game. As we move forward in our chronological journey, we arrive at the year 2007, a year that holds a highly unique and nostalgic place in the hearts of football purists. This was the year of Ricardo Isaacson dos Santos Leite, universally known as Kaká. To understand why his victory was so deeply respected across the entire planet, you have to realize that this was the definitive end of an era. Kaká's triumph in 2007 represents the absolute last time a regular human being won the Ballon d'Or before 2 terrifying footballing aliens named Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo stepped onto the stage and locked the award in a duopoly that would last for over a decade. But during those 12 magical months of 2007, neither Messi nor Ronaldo could even touch the shadow of the Brazilian playmaker. Kaká was the undisputed king of the world, operating at a level of elegant, destructive grace that left the biggest clubs in Europe completely helpless. Playing as the creative spearhead for AC Milan under Carlo Ancelotti, Kaká turned the UEFA Champions League into his own personal playground. He was not a traditional winger who relied on endless stepovers, nor was he a rugged midfielder. He was a devastating force of nature who moved with a vertical, gliding acceleration that made world-class defenders look like they were running through wet cement. The absolute peak of his legendary campaign came during the semi-finals against Manchester United. In the first leg at Old Trafford, Kaká produced a performance for the ages, scoring a majestic brace that included a goal where he single-handedly forced Gabriel Heinz and Patrice Evra to collide into each other before calmly slotting the ball past Edwin van der Sar. It was pure footballing poetry, executed at maximum speed. He finished that European campaign as the absolute top scorer with 10 goals, and he casually provided the crucial assist for Filippo Inzaghi in the Athens final to secure sweet redemption against Liverpool. When the votes were officially counted in Paris, Kaká blew the competition out of the water, leaving a young Cristiano Ronaldo in second place and a young Lionel Messi in third. There was absolutely no room for controversy, no bitter fan debates on internet forums, and no accusations of corporate bias. The entire world looked at what Kaká had achieved with that legendary Rossoneri shirt and simply nodded in profound respect. He had carried an aging AC Milan squad to the absolute summit of European football through sheer individual brilliance, showing the perfect blend of Brazilian flair and European tactical efficiency. For the 25 to 45 demographic who grew up watching the peak of Serie A and the classic Champions League nights of the mid-2000s, Kaká's victory remains a pristine, golden memory. It was a flawless victory built on big-game performances, immense leadership, and an unstoppable athletic prime. He conquered the world with a smile and left an indelible mark on the history of the sport before the modern era of hyperinflated statistics completely changed the landscape forever. The year 2010 marks the exact moment the modern footballing internet fractured into a state of permanent warfare. This was the year the Ballon d'Or merged with FIFA, and in doing so, changed its voting system to include national team managers and captains alongside traditional journalists. The result of this corporate shift was a decision that still causes absolute fury to this very day. Wesley Sneijder, the genius Dutch playmaker of Inter Milan, put together a 12-month resume that looked completely untouchable. Under the tactical guidance of Jose Mourinho, Sneijder was the undisputed engine room of an iconic Inter Milan side that did the impossible, winning a historic continental treble of the Serie A title, the Coppa Italia, and the ultimate crown, the UEFA Champions League. He was the man pulling the strings, delivering legendary assists against Barcelona in the semi-finals and setting up Diego Milito in the Madrid final. But Sneijder did not stop there. He carried that jaw-dropping club form directly onto the international stage at the 2010 FIFA World Cup in South Africa. He single-handedly guided a heavily unfavored Netherlands national team all the way to the World Cup final, finishing the tournament as the joint top scorer with 5 goals and claiming for Sepper Man of the Match awards. It was a season of unprecedented team success and individual brilliance. Yet when the glittering gala took place in Paris, Wesley Sneijder did not just lose the trophy to Lionel Messi, he did not even make the top 3 podium, finishing in a shocking 4th place behind Messi, Andrés Iniesta, and Xavi. The footballing world was left completely paralyzed with disbelief. If the award had been decided purely by journalists, as it always had been in the past, Sneijder would have won the Golden Ball comfortably. But the newly introduced votes from global coaches and captains favored the spectacular 91-goal individual brand of Lionel Messi, completely ignoring the historic trophies and clutch international performances of the Dutchman. It sparked a massive, ongoing debate about what the award truly stands for. Is it a trophy for the best individual football player on earth, or is it a reward for the most successful and impactful season? Before we move into the next massive scandal on our list, let us take a quick second to pause. If you are enjoying this deep dive into footballing history, make sure you take a moment to subscribe to the Football Archive, hit that like button, and drop a comment right now. Tell me honestly, do you think Lionel Messi deserved it in 2010 because of his pure talent, or was Wesley Sneijder victim to one of the biggest robberies in sports history? Let us get a massive discussion going down below because this specific year still divides fans right down the middle. For the 25 to 45 demographic who lived through that legendary 2010 summer, the image of Sneijder lifting the Champions League trophy but being totally discarded by the Parisian voters remains the ultimate symbol of modern football politics, a moment when corporate optics completely triumphed over raw, sporting merit on the pitch. If you thought the controversy of 2010 was a bitter pill for football fans to swallow, the year 2013 took the Ballon d'Or and plunged it into absolute theatrical chaos. This was the year that Franck Ribéry, the explosive, relentless French winger for Bayern Munich, put together an undeniable masterpiece of a season. Ribéry was the chief architect of an unstoppable, history-making Bayern Munich squad that swept aside everyone in Europe to secure a magnificent continental treble, winning the Bundesliga, the DFB Pokal, and the UEFA Champions League. Ribéry was playing with a terrifying intensity, combining breathtaking dribbling down the left flank with a defensive work rate that made him the absolute heart and soul of Jupp Heynck's tactical machine. He did not have the massive global PR machinery of his rivals, but he had the medals, the elite performances, and the unanimous backing of European pundits. Statistically, his individual numbers were spectacular, racking up 34 goal contributions while completely dominating the biggest knockout matches in Europe, including a historic 7-0 aggregate demolition of Barcelona. He was named the UEFA Men's Player of the Year, and as the original November voting deadline approached, Ribéry was the heavy, undisputed favorite to lift the golden ball. But then, the footballing world witnessed an unprecedented corporate intervention that changed the course of history. In late November, Cristiano Ronaldo scored a staggering, legendary hat-trick for Portugal against Sweden in a high-stakes World Cup qualification playoff match. Immediately following that viral, explosive performance, FIFA and France Football made the shocking, controversial decision to officially extend the Ballon d'Or voting deadline by 2 full weeks, claiming that not enough voters had submitted their ballots on time. Not only that, but they explicitly allowed voters who had already submitted their ballots to completely change their minds and recast their votes. The entire media narrative shifted instantly. The late extension allowed Cristiano Ronaldo's incredible playoff heroics to completely overshadow Ribéry's brilliant, year-long treble campaign. When the final gala took place in Paris, Cristiano Ronaldo took home the trophy, leaving Lionel Messi in second and a completely devastated Franck Ribéry in third place. The fallout from this decision was immense. Ribéry openly called it a political robbery, pointing out that he had won every single trophy possible, whereas Ronaldo had finished the club season with 0 major trophies at Real Madrid. It opened up a massive, permanent debate within the 25 to 45 demographic about the integrity of the award itself. Fans began to question if the trophy was truly a reflection of a 12-month sporting calendar, or if it was merely a popularity contest that could be manipulated by a single week of high-profile media hype and sudden rule changes behind closed doors. Ribéry's brilliant, flawless treble season was completely erased from the history books by a midnight administrative decision, making 2013 the ultimate symbol of how narrative and corporate power can completely overpower raw footballing achievement on the pitch. The dawn of the new decade brought about a global crisis that stopped the world in its tracks, and in the universe of football, it gave birth to arguably the most heartbreaking and bizarre Ballon d'Or controversy of all time. The year was 2020, and Robert Lewandowski, the ruthless Polish striker for Bayern Munich, was putting together a goal-scoring campaign that felt completely mythological. He was not just scoring goals, he was operating as a human cheat code, destroying every single defensive line that dared to step in his path. Under the aggressive tactical system of Hansi Flick, Lewandowski carried Bayern Munich to a majestic continental treble, winning the Bundesliga, the DFB Pokal, and the ultimate prize, the UEFA Champions League. Statistically, what this man achieved was nothing short of staggering. He scored an unbelievable 55 goals in 47 appearances across all competitions, finishing as the absolute top scorer in every single tournament he played. He was the undisputed king of European football, putting up numbers that rivaled the absolute peak years of Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo. He was the definitive, unanimous favorite to lift the golden ball, and there was not a single person on earth who could logically argue against him. But then, as the French magazine France Football watched the sporting calendar fracture due to the global pandemic, they made the sudden, shocking executive decision to completely cancel the 2020 Ballon d'Or Gala, claiming that the lack of fair conditions and the brief suspension of the French domestic league made it impossible to hand out a fair prize. The footballing world was left in a state of utter shock and disbelief. Every other major European league had returned to finish their seasons on the pitch. The Champions League had been completed in an intense knockout tournament in Lisbon, yet the most prestigious individual award in the sport was simply tossed into the garbage can. The injustice deepens when you transition into the year 2021, where Lewandowski once again went on an absolute rampage, breaking Gerd Muller's legendary, decades-old Bundesliga record by scoring 41 goals in a single domestic season. Yet when the voting took place for the 2021 trophy, the voters opted for the emotional narrative of Lionel Messi winning his first international trophy with Argentina at the Copa America, leaving Lewandowski in a bittersweet second place. Even Messi himself stood on the stage in Paris, holding the golden ball, and openly admitted that Lewandowski deserved to have the 2020 trophy sitting in his house. For the 25 to 45 demographic who watched the Polish forward single-handedly dominate global football during one of the most challenging periods in human history, this remains the ultimate modern heist. It was a corporate refusal to honor an all-time great during his absolute athletic prime, leaving a legendary career without the definitive golden exclamation point it had rightfully earned on the green pitch. To cleanse the palate after a decade plagued by political delays, corporate merges, and pandemic cancellations, the footballing world was treated to a year of absolute, undisputed meritocracy in the year 2022. This was the year of Karim Mostafa Benzema. If you want to look at a blueprint for a universally respected Ballon d'Or winner, someone who left absolutely zero margin for error, zero room for conspiracy theories, and zero arguments for rival fan bases on Twitter, Benzema's 22 campaign is the gold standard. For over a decade at Real Madrid, the French striker had willingly lived in the massive, towering shadow of Cristiano Ronaldo, sacrificing his own individual goal-scoring statistics to act as the ultimate tactical facilitator for the Portuguese superstar. But when Ronaldo departed, Benzema stepped into the absolute focal point of the Santiago Bernabeu, and during the 2021-2022 season, he morphed into an unstoppable footballing deity. Statistically, his season was spectacular, racking up 44 goals and 15 assists in 46 games. But what made the world stand up and applaud in pure respect was the sheer, historic weight of his performances in the UEFA Champions League knockout stages. Karim Benzema did not just win the tournament, he single-handedly dragged a transitioning Real Madrid squad through the most brutal, chaotic gauntlet of European giants ever witnessed. He scored a legendary rapid-fire second-half hat-trick against Paris Saint-Germain to complete an impossible comeback. He traveled to Stamford Bridge and smashed another magnificent hat-trick against Chelsea. He scored 3 crucial goals across 2 legs against Pep Guardiola's Manchester United and Manchester City, showing an icy, unbelievable composure, including a daring Panenka penalty in the middle of an absolute stadium war. He finished the European campaign as the absolute top scorer with 15 goals, 10 of which came strictly in the knockout rounds, equaling an all-time tournament record. When October of 2022 arrived at the Théâtre du Châtelet in Paris, the atmosphere was completely serene because everyone on the planet already knew the result. Benzema won by one of the largest point margins in the history of France football, leaving Sadio Mane and Kevin De Bruyne miles behind in his wake. There were no boycotts, no furious media rants, and no accusations of corruption. Even rival fans of Barcelona and Atletico Madrid had to stand in awe of a 34-year-old veteran who had perfected the art of the modern number 9. Benzema's victory was highly respected because it was forged entirely on the pitch in the heaviest, most high-stakes moments of the season. It proved that despite the heavy marketing and global PR machines that often cloud modern individual awards, a purely dominant, historic carry job in the biggest tournament in the world can still achieve absolute, undeniable footballing justice. If the previous years of the award were defined by tactical debates and quiet disagreements behind closed doors, the year 2024 took the Ballon d'Or and turned it into an explosive, global internet meltdown. This was the year that the criteria officially shifted, placing a massive emphasis on fair play, leadership, and big game performances. For months leading up to the grand ceremony in Paris, the entire footballing media, the sports books, and the fans on social media had crowned a definitive winner. That man was Vinicius Jr. The Brazilian winger had endured a brutal, highly emotional season under Carlo Ancelotti at Real Madrid, facing horrific racial abuse across Spanish stadiums while single-handedly carrying the attack of the biggest club in the world. Statistically, he was devastating, racking up 24 goals and 11 assists, including a brilliant goal in the UEFA Champions League final against Borussia Dortmund to secure the historic 15th European crown for Los Blancos. He was the heavy, undisputed favorite, and Real Madrid had even booked a private charter flight for a delegation of 50 people to celebrate his coronation in Paris. But then, on the morning of the ceremony, a devastating leak fractured the footballing world. Vinicius Jr. was not winning the trophy. Instead, the golden ball was going to Rodri, the brilliant, flawless midfield anchor for Manchester City and the Spanish national team, who had enjoyed a historic 74-match unbeaten streak and captured both the Premier League and the UEFA European Championship. In an act of pure unprecedented fury, Real Madrid completely boycotted the entire gala, leaving their seats entirely empty and releasing a fierce statement claiming that the Ballon d'Or did not respect their club. The internet exploded into a state of total modern warfare. On one side, fans argued that Rodri was the ultimate symbol of tactical perfection, a midfield general who controlled the entire rhythm of global football, making his victory a long-overdue triumph for the unsung heroes of the pitch. On the other side, millions of fans felt that Vinicius Jr. had been subjected to a deeply political, narrative-driven robbery, arguing that the late addition of a vague fair play criterion was explicitly used to penalize the outspoken Brazilian winger. The controversy exposed the deep, unbridgeable divide within the modern 25 to 45 demographic who consume football through viral clips, metrics, and instant social media reaction. It was no longer just a debate about who played better football over 12 months. It was a cultural war about club power, marketing influence, and institutional respect. Rodri stepped onto the stage on crutches to claim his prize amid a chorus of boos and cheers across the digital landscape, cementing the 2024 Ballon d'Or as the absolute peak of modern football controversy, a night when the beautiful game was completely overshadowed by corporate drama, institutional pride, and a social media storm that will never be forgotten. Following the digital warfare and toxic division that tore the football world apart in 2024, the sport desperately needed a narrative that could heal its wounds and bring back pure, unfiltered admiration. Nobody could have predicted that the man to deliver that healing moment in the year 2025 would be Ousmane Dembélé. For nearly a decade, the French winger had been treated by the global football media as one of the most polarizing figures of his generation. He was the golden boy who had arrived at Barcelona for an astronomical fee, only to see his career plagued by recurring hamstring tears, high-profile tactical inconsistencies, and relentless criticism regarding his lifestyle and focus. He was a player constantly living in the shadow of his own theoretical potential, labeled by many critics as a magnificent failure. But during the 2024 to 2025 season, everything clicked into place in the most spectacular fashion imaginable. Playing under a highly precise tactical system that granted him complete creative freedom, Dembélé transformed into a devastating, mature footballing powerhouse. He did not just use his blistering speed and his unique, terrifying ability to destroy defenders with both feet. He combined that raw talent with an elite level of decision-making, playmaker maturity, and high-stakes leadership. Statistically, his season was an absolute masterpiece of modern wing play, racking up over 20 goals and leading the continent in direct assists. He was the creative engine that drove his team through an extraordinary domestic and European campaign, consistently stepping up in the biggest Champions League knockout matches to deliver clutch goals and jaw-dropping solo displays. But what truly earned him the profound respect of the global footballing community was his psychological resilience. To watch a player who had been utterly ridiculed, booed, and written off by his own supporters climb out of that dark hole of injuries and intense media pressure to touch the absolute peak of the sport was deeply moving. When December of 2025 arrived at the glittering gala in Paris, the atmosphere was completely different from the toxic chaos of the previous year. There were no institutional boycotts, no leaking scandals, and no furious rants on social media. The entire footballing world, from his old critics to rival fans across Europe, stood united in a standing ovation that shook the theater. Dembélé lifted the golden ball with a look of pure relief and humility on his face. His victory was highly respected because it represented the ultimate human redemption arc. It was a beautiful reminder to the 25 to 45 demographic who had watched his entire turbulent career that talent is never truly lost if it is backed by hard work and mental strength. It was a magnificent triumph for footballing romance, proving that sometimes the Ballon d'Or can still look past the corporate noise to award a player who genuinely conquered both his opponents on the green pitch and the inner demons that threatened to derail his legacy. We have traveled through over 2 decades of footballing history, witnessing the absolute highest peaks of human emotion and the deepest, most polarizing valleys of administrative controversy. From the miraculous redemption of Ronaldo Nazario in 2002 to the chaotic, viral social media battlefields of the modern era, our journey has revealed the complex truth behind the most prestigious individual accolade in the history of sports. The Ballon d'Or is not just a trophy. It is a highly powerful cultural mirror that reflects how our collective perception of greatness changes with every passing generation. We have seen that when the award aligns with raw on-field merit, poetic justice, and pure artistic expression, it has the unique power to unite the entire global community in profound respect. But we have also seen that when corporate politics, sudden voting extensions, and narrative-driven media campaigns take center stage, it exposes a fragile system that leaves the streets feeling completely hollowed out by injustice. This brings us to a massive, defining realization about the modern game itself. Football is no longer just a simple sport decided by 11 players against 11 players on a green patch of grass. It is a massive global spectacle driven by digital optics, marketing machines, and viral public relations. But despite its obvious flaws, the political maneuvering behind closed doors, and the intense debates that fracture fan bases every single year, we simply cannot look away from it. We continue to hold our collective breath every winter because the Golden Ball represents the ultimate narrative validation of a player's career legacy. Before we officially close the curtains on this epic production at the Football Archive, do yourself a massive favor one last time. Hit that subscribe button right now, smash the like button with maximum power, and leave your definitive closing thoughts in the comments section down below. Looking at the entire historical timeline we just analyzed, do you believe the Ballon d'Or has fundamentally lost its true sporting soul to global marketing? Or do you believe it still remains the ultimate, beautiful dream that every single footballer on earth should strive to conquer? Let us get an absolute war going in the comments section below, because this debate is far from over. Thank you so much for watching. Keep the passion for the beautiful game alive, and we will see you next time in the archives.